Welcome to the Kingdom Business Forum, a program where we inspire believers in business to advance the Great Commission through the platform God has given them in the workplace. I'm Vicki Norris, and typically I co-host this program with Patrice Gay of Nehemiah Project International Ministries. Now today he's serving on a panel, so we will be hearing from him. I met Patrice when I went through his Biblical Entrepreneurship Training Program. It personally transformed me and my business, and now I operate with a kingdom in mind. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping you, the listener, our viewer, transform your life through the power of the Spirit's leading and biblical principles for business. Also, one of the things that biblical entrepreneurship did for me was it introduced me to the whole world of marketplace ministry. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today, the marketplace ministry movement. We're going to be meeting some of the leaders and forerunners in the movement, and we're going to be talking about how they are dealing with this issue of unity. Because historically, there's been a lot of siloing in the marketplace ministry, and this is going to be an opportunity for us to learn how unity is important not only in that movement, but in the body of Christ. So I think you're going to learn a lot today and be blessed by meeting these thought leaders. I want to tell you about them. Patrice Gay is the Chief Servant Officer of Nehemiah Project International Ministries, the developer of the Biblical Entrepreneurship Training Program, and he's an author and speaker. Oz Hillman is president of Marketplace Leaders, and he's author of 11 books, and today, God is First, Daily E-Devotional. We also have with us today Ford Taylor, the owner of FSH Consulting Group and the developer of Transformational Leadership Conferences, and he's also an executive and strategic consultant. Welcome to the Kingdom Business Forum, all of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, we have just such an important topic today because you all are here together for a reason. We're in Virginia Beach. We have just participated in the Transformational Leadership Conference that you've put on for us, Ford. And this was a great opportunity also for you to gather some people that you've met through the Marketplace Ministry movement and bring these people together. And I want you to share with our listeners a little bit about why that was necessary. I mean, you all have probably rubbed shoulders at different events. You've probably been requested for the same event sometimes. So I want to know, how did you guys all come together? Tell me about that.
Well, Vicki, it's actually a very interesting story. For really a few years now, as I've gone out and traveled a little bit and met some of the people that I have learned from and respected and heard their names, as I've done that, I've basically put a challenge out to many of them and just said, when are you guys going to come together in unity and develop something to give guys like me somebody to follow? And so we can see some kind of unity. In Cincinnati, I challenged the local business guys that we would be a model for the pastors to follow. What if we as competitors in the business world in Cincinnati, what if we came together and worked on the same companies together, worked in the city together? We might be a model of unity that maybe the churches would look up and go, how come we're not doing that? Well, as I was traveling and challenging leaders, would y'all come together? In a few-week period, I ran into Lance Wallnow and Oz Hillman, and Patrice and I had been walking together, and already been talking about this some. And then Tom Stansberry and some others, Joseph Umidi, came in later. And as I would meet with them, I would just challenge them with the same question. Lance, when are you going to pull a group together and give us somebody to follow? Oz, when are you going to pull a group together and give us somebody to follow? And as I was asking these questions, they would say, if this is such a passion on your heart, why don't you call us together? And they would say things like, if you'll call, we'll come. And because they
Which is saying a lot, because these are people who are scheduled out probably for a year or more sometimes, who travel internationally, who are speaking to thousands of people. And that's not a small feat to hear that kind of feedback. I mean, there's definitely some interest there from them.
Well, what that tells you is that you're not making the call. When they're saying that, very clearly it's not Ford making the call, that they already have a vision, they already grasp it, they already know that it's their destiny, and so it's God making the call. And so for us to be able to put that meeting literally together in 3 or 4 weeks, and we converged in the city, I started seeing something I thought the Lord had shown me a few years ago, that one day He would have leaders across America that would have learned to humble themselves before Him to learn to submit to one another. And then when we saw that we'd see an accelerated convergence of synchronized destiny.
Can you say that again for our listeners?
Okay, an accelerated convergence of synchronized destiny.
I'm not even going to try to write that down for it. That's good. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, what it means is that those leaders that already knew their call in their life, that they had a destiny that God had called them to, they already saw the vision. And at some point they would start converging together. And that convergence would start synchronizing. So these different points of light, these different gifts that God put out there that had the different tools to see the kingdom purposes fulfilled, that when that group learned to humble themselves before God and before one another, that they'd be willing to lay down their thing for the other's thing, that there would be an accelerated convergence of those people coming together. In just a very few weeks, as you said, for that group of men I just called out, as busy as they are, to say, let's do this. You knew that it was a group of men who had already humbled themselves before God and were ready to submit to one another. And for me, it was encouraging because these are men that, a lot of them are my teachers. I mean, I'm learning from them, and so it's just a humbling place to be able to walk within this closely in covenant.
So you just said covenant. Tell me about that.
Well, one of the reasons the training we do, as you know, is called transformational leadership, the missing link. And the missing link, we believe, is that we don't have enough leaders who've had their own personal transformation enough to be able to make transformational disciplers. Obviously, we don't have time to unfold all that right now. But what happens is if people who have had that, they are ready to walk in covenant with one another. And covenant is not like a contract. A covenant is, it doesn't matter what you do, I won't walk away from you. It doesn't matter how bad you mess up. It doesn't matter what kind of mistake you make. We're going to see this through. And so we agreed to covenant together to be able to go in, because we all realize that individually we can help a city a little bit. We can help a region a little bit, maybe even a country a little bit. But when all those pieces of the puzzle start coming together, we believe God might use us to help a whole lot more. Because each of those men and women that we're talking about have very specific callings, very specific gifts, very specific tools and ingredients to share with communities. And so as they come together and lay their piece of puzzle on the table, again, we're seeing an accelerated convergence of synchronized destiny. And that picture of that puzzle looks so much prettier when it's together than when the different pieces are one on the floor and one on the table, maybe one that fell in the trash can. But instead, they're all being put together.
Too, I think that it's going to increase the longevity and the sustainability of all of the individual efforts. That's what I see about what you're putting together. So would it be fair to say that what you're trying to accomplish then is this covenant group? Is there anything beyond that you're trying to accomplish? Like, do you have a vision or mission for the group?
We all, God has called each of us into some different areas of the United States and different cities. And what we're wanting to do is be able to go in and back up or support one another, to walk hand in hand, arm in arm, that we literally can help the city. In other words, it becomes about Jesus in the city more than about any one of us as an individual. And what we found in all the different things that are coming together, it really doesn't matter who's in their first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. And it's amazing because typically you would think that, well, this group has to go first and then this group. But by God's design, it really doesn't matter because the way He's already put this together even long before we met one another. And so there is a vision that we believe that God has put a vision out that many people have about seeing their community transformed, to see leaders come together across the different mountains or spheres of cultural influence. And as those leaders come together and lay down their lives, that they literally can see a transformation in their city, a change in their companies, the businesses, the churches, the schools, and there'll be real systemic, long-lasting change in their cities.
Thank you for that, Ford. So Oz, where my mind goes with all this is you've been a forerunner in the marketplace ministry movement. Have you seen something like this attempted before, where some of the leaders have come together and have said, we need to band together? Do you have some history that you can offer for this kind of an endeavor?
Well, when I first started getting involved in it back in 1990, really but ultimately formalized in 96 and 97, one of the things the Lord was showing me was the need to bring other leaders together for this common cause. And that led to the birth of an organization in 1997 of other leaders in the marketplace movement. And God had given me a verse back then, John 17:20 through 23, and that was where Jesus was praying to the Father, and he said, I pray that they would be one as you and I are one. And the rest of that verse, kind of the paraphrase, is that in order that they might see me, in order that they might believe in me, they see the love, they know that I am, the Father's Son. So there was a very specific thing that would happen, and the thing that he showed me about that was that when that happens, there's a multiplication factor. In other words, as we operate as silos, we'll, sure, each of us will have our individual fruit from our ministry, but there's some dynamic that's like this atom, if you will, that happens when you begin to connect the various dots together. And once there's a level of unity, then something happens out there that God causes the marketplace to respond to Jesus. And rather than being, 5 or 10 that respond to us, it's hundreds. And so that was the thing that I kept seeing. But the missing ingredient was that I began to gather these leaders, and we had good times together. But we never developed the level of relationship that was required to begin walking together and doing things together and leveraging our various organizations. And it wasn't until, here we are, 14 years later, that I just met Ford back in June, and there were several people that said I needed to meet him, and so he had a part of the puzzle that was missing, and that was this whole relational leadership element. And he talks about the difference between relational leadership and transactional leadership. And I realized that that's why we were never able to build that level of relationship. And I think also it's important to have the same DNA to be able to walk together, have some of the same vision, but also have some uniqueness that others don't have. Each of us that were part of our group, we have a uniqueness that's not duplicated. And so we each can bring something to the puzzle so that when you put all the pieces of the puzzle, it forms a very attractive picture that I believe represents the unity that Christ is talking about, and the multiplication factor. If we look at William Wilberforce, the reason that he was so successful was he walked with 10 to 14 other people called the Clapham Group, and he effected 69 world-changing initiatives there in England, and the least of which was, not the least of which was abolishment of slavery. And so this was a very important aspect of success. And sociologists and some of the writers about culture change all cite the fact that it's when networks come together and they begin to get densely focused together, and that they begin to create change.
Can you talk for a minute? I now know what you mean, since I've been through the Transformational Leadership Conference. When you said level of relationship, other things that have been attempted did not address or didn't engage at the same level of relationship. Can you talk about that kind of transparency that that the as one group, as you're calling it, is really aiming to exhibit?
Well, I think when we first got together, one of our first meetings was really to sit down and say, where are you in your life? What's the greatest challenges you have? What are the things that you need help with? Where are you? Tell me your story, Because basically all of us have a story of how we got to where we are, and to know the challenges. And I think there had to be some vulnerability, and then to say, okay, what is it that we're willing to lay down for the sake of others in this relationship? And that often really hits it where it's at, isn't it? When are we willing to share our list? Are we willing to to cooperate financially on some things? Are we willing to really see what I have in my hand, can I offer it in some way to help support what you're trying to do? And that your vision also becomes my vision.
That's a level of risk and exposure that I think a lot of people immediately push back on, which is why we need Ford's transformational leadership training. It's why I needed it. And, you know, this brings me to Patrice. One of the things that you teach in your biblical entrepreneurship, and even just in some of the preaching I've heard you talk about, is competing versus completing. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that might relate to this group?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that Oz mentioned, the whole idea of each one having their own uniqueness, I think that's critical. I mean, you know, the book of Corinthians talks about the various parts of the body. One of the hindrances to unity is obviously people feeling insecure and threatened by the other. We all know that in any business, you need to know what your competitive advantage is. That's your uniqueness, as Oz talked about. Well, we've historically looked from the world's point of view, we look at the competitive advantage as the element that makes me better than.
Right. This is how I'm going to crush you,
That's
basically,
right.
in the business world.
But there's two ways of looking at that. Obviously, we do have what I call the ites out there, the enemies of the kingdom. These are companies and entities that we want to redeem. Right? These are that when the children of Israel went to possess the land, they were the ites, the enemies of the kingdom, that they were trying to destroy. As New Testament believers, we're trying to redeem them, and in a sense, destroy them. You know, but then, so your competitive advantage allows you, your uniqueness allows you to know how to position yourself properly, so you can go offensively against the enemy of the kingdom. But then you have those who are collaborators or part of the kingdom, who your competitive advantage or your uniqueness allows you to be able to know how to best collaborate with them. See, if I don't know my uniqueness, I'll be threatened by Ford. I'll be threatened by Oz. But if I know my uniqueness, my unique contribution to the process, then I'll know that I'm a piece of a bigger puzzle. Here's the other thing. If I don't know my uniqueness, I can bring confusion by emulating versus standing out.
That's good, man.
So
That's good.
Thank you, Oz.
Well, and to the point that you teach in biblical entrepreneurship, too, really, when you're meeting a need with your unique gifts, that's when you've been prepared for opportunity. I mean, that's when it comes together. So you're applying the uniqueness that God himself poured into each of you.
That's right.
And you're reflecting back that view of
Right.
the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit out to the world.
Yeah. So we are completing each other. Oz brings a wealth of historical resources and worldview that has shaped, even though we think about the Seven Mountains, all this workplace ministry and so forth today. Ford brings the element of the importance of understanding that we are all broken. And unless we are healed, we cannot bring change. You know, Oz talks about being a change agent. Well, a change agent must be a broken individual, and he even talks about that whole process. You know, so each of us brings something unique that without it, the whole cannot be complete.
So why is unity, do you think, and this could be open for any of you, why is unity at this level necessary for total marketplace transformation?
Without unity, God cannot command a blessing.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else have anyone? It's fairly straightforward.
The war, I mean, the war is so great that no one individually can do it, and it has to be leveraged collectively to have the impact that's necessary.
Well, and I think you've experienced over all these many years, Oz, the overflowing need that is out there for the professional, not just the business owner, but for anyone who's in the work environment, which is most people, don't know how to reconcile their personal and their professional life. And they don't know what to do with their faith, which they might have, you know, put in one piece of their pie. And so the need is so tremendous to educate them, to train them, to equip them. And each of you that I see before me and the others in your As One group really address different pieces of that. One person might need the whole piece, and others might need the whole pie. So I want to ask you, though, about your group. What are the challenges that you see coming for a group like this? And do you see just bonding and unity, or do you see challenges in the future? What's the vision? What's the both the positives and the challenges that you see for the group?
Vicki, I think probably the biggest challenge is we've not been down this road before. We asked Hampton Roads, for example, would you be a guinea pig to let us work with you? And of course, they literally threw their hands up and said, really?
Yeah.
And so it's nice to have a community that you're in relationship with that's saying, come on, we'll go through the bumps and the bruises with you. So that's one challenge. We're figuring this out as we go. We have a look at what we would like to see the end game be. The process itself, there's some challenges with it. The second challenge is we don't live in the same town. Now, thanks to technology, we can get together on a regular basis through video conference and look at each other's face and continue building the relationship, but not being right there together. The third thing is, when we talk about unity, a lot of people see us having to sit in the room together. And one of the messages that I've been given for the last few years is how do we divide and conquer in unity? So in other words, sometimes, we can't all be necessarily in the same room every time. There'll be times that we might be in, 7 different cities, but there might be times that we're all in the same city. But those challenges definitely present themselves. The other is that we would stop holding each other. We call them bumper people, bumper buddies, that we bump each other back on that road to righteousness regularly, that we make a commitment not to let one wander, to catch each other before sin takes place. Well, if there's a risk if someone wanders, and then for us to say that we're not at risk at that would be setting ourselves up for failure. But by us acknowledging we're at risk with that, we lower that possibility. And so really more logistics, more of us being able to pray in unity, that God would give us answers together in unity, that when we talk, it's amazing with these guys that when we email back and forth, it's almost like any one of us could have said what's in the email. And that's just a sweet, fun place to walk.
I think there are a few other things, and that is intentionality. That in order for something like this to work, there has to be intentionality with the partners. That you're not going to let weeks go by where you're not connecting with each other, talking about things, and knowing what the other needs are and what we need to do to help in their own, whatever they may be facing. We're very busy people in terms of the pressures and things that are on us, so it's not unusual to, a week or 2 or 3 go by and say, oh, we haven't connected with each other. And that's a challenge for us that have lived in the transactional world most of our lives and being very independent entrepreneurs. So it goes against the grain of our natural tendencies to really press into that.
I guess the upside of that, though, is that we're all wired for intimacy. And that's what I see is so beautiful about this, is that we desire to be known. And we do work better in community. That's why God made it that way. So I think that's an encouragement to you to be intentional and to continue in that. And I think you've given already some wonderful things for our viewers and listeners to think about, because I hope that they're beginning to consider through this panel, this interview, how they might be able to create a group of their own where they could get some transparency and vulnerability and accountability and uniqueness among the members. I would be curious if you have any advice for that listener out there who wants to do that. And also, is there a cap to this size, to maybe a size of the group where it would grow to be too much? Do you have any thoughts on that, Ford? And
before Ford addresses that real quick, I want to say one of the challenges also, Vicki, is that because this process has to be funded, is that we can miss in the midst of the unity process and the relational process, being intentional about how to engage ourselves transactionally so that the process is sustainable Because historically, churches come together, and what happens? There's no sustainability.
Right.
So over time, so because we are marketplace people, we have to be relational, and sometimes have a healthy balance of the transaction element, so that what we do becomes sustainable over time.
So when you say that, though, what you mean is that you might provide resources of Oz's to your constituents and so forth. Okay,
you got
just
it.
for our
Vice versa,
listeners.
and not abusing each other. You see, in other words, Ross, do me a favor. You know what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Not leveraging. We had to speak, for instance, for us at Portland. I insisted that the group that was inviting him compensates him versus using my relationships to undermine. Because in the body of Christ, one of the challenges that we've used these relationships oftentimes to take advantage. Now I have access to Oz and to Ford.
Right.
And what happens?
Well, we've made it a holy huddle,
You
number
got
one.
it.
And
You
so
got
there's
it.
exclusivity.
So that's a major.
But then we've also been cheap about it, and we haven't honored, and you teach us to create biblical profits, so we're kind of destroying that in the process. Do you want to speak to the cap of such a group?
Yeah, and on the money thing, most of us marketplace guys, we're not afraid of money. Okay, there's nothing wrong with money. God created money, and it's like I tell people who come to our trainings. We train a lot of people that we scholarship who can't afford it. But if there's a billionaire in the room or someone that's wealthy, guys, if you got $100,000 worth of value, pay us. We're cool about that. There's nothing, we'll take it because it'll just open the doors for more. So we don't have this poverty mentality. At the same time, we're not in it for the money. Because if we were, we wouldn't be doing this. Because there's lots of easier ways to make money. Because I used to make a lot of money, and so that's not that hard. And so sustainability is, but the good news is we're not afraid of the money. We don't love the money. Okay, we don't have a love of it, but we still want it. We need it because it opens the door for us to do more. So we're good with that. On the size of the group, yeah, I really encourage everybody when God gives you a vision that you have a group that what we call the inner core. And this inner core is a group of people who are willing to apply everything, some of their resources, their time, their energy, their effort, to lay down a piece of their lives to take on being a part of the inner core of a vision. And around them, you have what I call a core group. And this group is people who want to be a part of the inner core, but maybe they really don't have the time yet or the resources at that time to apply muddling through it, taking the bumps in the road, the hits. And so, but they're in. They catch the vision. They want to be a part. Then you got lean inners and lean outers. And so what I recommend to people is on their inner core is to see the inner core and the core almost the same. And that way you really don't limit the size of your group. On your inner core, it has to be limited because we can only take so many relationships. Jesus had to limit his inner core. It doesn't mean he ever left anybody out. And so our intent is not to be a holy huddle. It's not to leave anybody out. And anybody that wants to be in the core, we want to welcome them to be a part of this. There will be people that want to throw hand grenades at this. People that are afraid of money, people that would feel left out, people that don't have their own healing, that take offense to things. So yes, typically, if I go into a company, I tell them typically 7 to 12 people in your inner core. If you're really a good leader, you might be able to take 15 to 18. When you start getting past that, you're probably going to start killing yourself.
Thank you for that. Well, this has been a fantastic opportunity to just hear from each of you. I thank you for being a part of this panel, and I hope that you, the listener and the viewer of the Kingdom Business Forum, maybe have had some ideas today about how you might begin to establish an inner core in your business, in an association that you might belong to of business people. Like-minded individuals. I think we've gotten some great advice today that there's a level of transparency and relationship, that they have the same DNA, similar vision, but also their own uniqueness that they could bring to the table. A group of maybe somewhere between 7 and 12 people. Hopefully this, as you see this happening on a national and global level, we can do this right in our own communities, in our own backyard, and I hope that you will. I hope that we've opened up the conversation and some ideas for you at the Kingdom Business Forum. You can see this video and all the other videos of our segments on the Kingdom Business Forum fan page at facebook.com, and we hope you'll connect with us there. Thank you.